Wrestling fans, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped. Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. And gentlemen, if you have hair, this tool is for you. If you're like my friend Tom, who's hairless, he's like a seal, you don't need this product. But if you're like most of us and want to keep the family jewels up to snuff this summer, check out Manscaped. We've partnered with Manscaped and are now offering a 20% discount to podcast listeners. Use the promo code WCML at checkout at manscaped.com.
I've wrestled in 16 U.S. Opens, been in a final of 12 of them. I actually won one. And in saying all those things, I never qualified for a state tournament in high school. I know you already knew this, but
we can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestle, because if you wrestle, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling.
I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Welcome back to Wrestling Changed My Life. Our guest today is Tom, the Big Cat Erikson, one of the great heavyweight wrestlers of all time. Tom grew up in Illinois, never qualified for the high school state tournament, but went on to wrestle in 12 U.S. Open finals. He won one in 1997. He was also a 3-time Olympic alternate, and then went on to have a storied career in the early days of MMA, fighting in front of 50,000 Japanese fans at the early Pride events. Tom is currently the assistant coach at Duke and has stories that stand the test of time. I hope you enjoy this episode. Fan of the Week goes to Adam Aikman, representing Ukiah, California. Thank you for the gear purchase, Adam. We greatly appreciate it. If you want to buy a Wrestling Changed My Life t-shirt, go to store.wrestlingchangemylife.com. And that's it, folks. Let's give it up for the Big Cat, Tom Erikson. Let's just roll right on into it. Tom Erikson, welcome to the podcast, sir.
oh man, my pleasure. I always love to be on one of these, especially with a Chicagoland guy.
Amen. We're going to have some fun. We had fun talking earlier today, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Just kind of give us the high level of your career, kind of the speech you get to camps and to kids you coach, and then we'll take it from there.
I did this a little bit with you, and I kind of beg forgiveness as I start through this. I give a little speech and stuff like that, but I've wrestled in the U.S. Open. I've wrestled in 16 U.S. Opens, been in a final of 12 of them. I actually won one, and then finished no lower than third. I've won the World Cup. I've been second in the World Cup multiple times. I've won 28 international tournaments. I've been the alternate on 3 Olympic teams, 2-time Division I All-American, 2-time Junior College National Champion, an Outstanding Wrestler, Most Falls Award. And those are all pretty neat accomplishments. And in saying all those things, I never qualified for a state tournament in high school. I know you already knew this, but I never qualified. The closest I got was a 4th place finisher, and they took top 3 in the sectional in Illinois. So I didn't make it. So yeah, kind of a fun, hard luck story, whatever you want to say, but motivated and driven and stuff like that. And I've been really fortunate to have some special people along my way. And obviously most of them are coaches, but just some guideposts to kind of push me in that direction, and a lot of internal fortitude and drive and desire.
When did the clarification of your goals and your vision start for you?
I went to a Division III school. Like I say, none of this happened. I went to a Division III school, University of Dubuque. Tore up my knee. I spent roughly 3.5 weeks in and out of a hospital, staph infection, all kinds of crazy stuff. End up transferring back to this little old junior college in Illinois called Triton College. And once I was there, so the first year I basically redshirted the rest of that second semester. They won the national title. The next year, became eligible, was the starting heavyweight. I won the national title. The team won a national title when I was there. Like I said, I was at Triton College. After the season, about a month or so after the season, walked into the head coach's office, awesome gentleman named Art Kraft, and walked into him, fighting back tears. Told him, Coach Kraft, I just want to talk to you. He goes, well, what do you need, big hog? And I'm like, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to wrestle anymore. And he's like, what do you mean you're not going to wrestle? I go, Coach, I never qualified for a tournament in high school. I'm in the student senate. I'm working. I had a job. It was Burger King, but it was a job. I'm going to school. I just won a national title. We won a national title. It's not getting better than that. I mean, I know nearsightedness now, et cetera, but I mean, that's my thought process. I'm like, I can't thank you enough for what you've done and everything you've given to me and this team and everything else, but I just don't see it going anywhere for me. And he goes, look, you're going to be fine. You are going to wrestle next year. I'm like, Coach, I really don't think it's going to happen. I don't see. He goes, well, I'll tell you what, you're going to wrestle next year because I want you to know something. You're going to be my last. You're going to be the last one I coach. And I'm like, okay, how are you going to turn that down? So boom, I wrestle again, win the national title, pin my way through it. I did it the first year. I pinned everybody I wrestled the first year. I pinned 3. I got a bye, pin 3, 1 tech fall, won the title. Next year, I pinned everybody I wrestled again. So I was like one of the first ones to do it once, and I did it twice. I'm probably it's got to be a limited group. Pinned my way through it, OW, most falls and stuff like that. End up going to Oklahoma State.
How'd you jump from not being a high school state qualifier to pinning your way through JUCOs? I don't get it.
Man, if I had that answer, I'd be a gold medal coach too. I don't know. It's just, it's just a chip on my shoulder. It's, late bloomer, lots of fun things, late bloomer. And I said it briefly, in our little intro. I'm like, man, there's a lot of really neat people in my life. And Art Kraft was one of my high school coach. He would drag me around the little tournaments. Greg Zeidema, he did, some great stuff for me then. Art Kraft there at Triton, then Joe C there, Art Martori, Sunkiss Kids, Joe C at Oklahoma State kind of drove me on, and the crazy thing, so I win 2 JUCO titles. So I transfer, I'm going to go to Oklahoma State, sign with Oklahoma State that summer, that 84-85 summer. Olympics are over. So that summer I go to the US Open, which is in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. And I take third. I take third in the US Open. A JUCO guy take third in the US Open. I end up losing to Andy Schwab. Bruce wins it. Schwab takes second. I take third. I beat a guy, a monster by the name of Rick Peterson. He wrestled at Lock Haven years ago, back in the 84, 85, right in there. His senior year, he was a chiseled, Greek god. Ended up pinning him to take third. Went to the trials, was ranked second in the U.S. So I go from 2-time JUCO champ to being ranked second on the senior circuit and U.S. Open from not having even placed in a high school state tournament. Qualified. Let's go there.
So being a Midwest guy, how come you didn't go to Iowa? How'd you get to Oklahoma State?
Nobody recruited me. I mean, Iowa didn't do transfers. I looked at, it was down to Iowa State and Oklahoma State were the 2. And I went to back-to-back visits with those guys. And I like the campus, the atmosphere down there. And so I ended up going to Oklahoma State.
So that era when you got there is one I covered heavily in that documentary series I was telling you, The Smiths. And man, Tommy Chesbro on the outs, Joe C coming in. He was an outsider. He gets in that car crash. And then he kind of starts to turn the program around. But if you got there in the summer of 84 or 85?
85.
So 85, 86.
85, okay. 86, 86, 87 were my 2 years there.
What was your impression and memories of Joe C?
I liked the guy. Really, really good guy. Would give you the shirt off his back. He cared so much. I think, if you were to sit there and look at what the allegations and things that he was accused of, admitted to and stuff, it were little peddly things. And you know what the old saying is, the cover up is worse than the crime. And when you start lying and say, I didn't do this and didn't do that, it's worse than what it was. And basically he was trying to help kids that he had signed, have them pay them fair salary, go to camp, work camps and stuff like that. And I think he had to replace a kid's engine who was dragging his t-shirt camp around and stuff like that. Some little piddly things. But when you start lying to the, you know, big brother, they don't like it. And they kind of slap you down a little bit.
And absolutely. And outside of all that stuff, but like as a coach though, he was just like a master mentor, and you really enjoyed working with him.
Really open mind. He wasn't a hands-on guy. He liked to let the room take care of itself. People, and I equate that to camps that I went, you know, with USA Wrestling camps where, man, our best teachers were the athletes themselves. I mean, Dave Schultz would do technique with us. John, you know, would be doing technique. This is when John started out in his little run, you know, with his 6, but John would do it. Zeke Jones, Melvin Douglas, phenomenal technique on his lace series. Zeke Jones was really, really good. You had to pry it out of Zeke. Zeke was tight with the technique. But Kevin Jackson, you know, you name those old timers and all those guys I've been naming, World Olympic champions and stuff like that, who would run our practices. And Joe would just would bring these people in. They gravitate towards Joe, and he'd bring these people in. And oh, by the way, it didn't hurt that we had Kenny Monday, Mike Sheets in the room, Akira Odo, 2-time Olympic silver medalist. I've got some pictures. I probably ought to send you a picture. You're like that, our staff. Corey Bays, Kendall Cross, John Smith, myself, Mike Sheets, Akira Odo. That was like a coaching staff.
And my man Vince Alvarez, I got to get him in there. I love that guy.
Yeah.
He's another one. I just love that era in Oklahoma because there was a lot going on. Of course, the great John Smith was on his rise. What was your first impression of John Smith coming from JUCOs to meeting this? You know, I don't know if he was a living legend yet, but he was on his way.
He wasn't, not yet. I mean, he, like I say, I was there 85, 86, and that was right before the Goodwill games. You know, John's coming off that loss. He got hurt. He's kind of beat up in that loss with Jordan. Bad shoulder. So people don't really, I don't think remember that, but he wasn't 100% in that match. And so he's coming off that loss in the NCAA finals. Well, he's going to redshirt, or, you know, he's not even going to wrestle. Okay. But he's in there training and doing all these things. And he wasn't the legend there. I mean, he's just I know it sounds bad. He's only an NCAA runner-up at the time. I know how petty that sounds, but at the time. So yeah, he wasn't the guy, but you know, there's other All-Americans we had in the room, et cetera. So he was just another one of the guys. But you could tell there's something different about John, a little bit out of his own. He did a little bit of things on his own, kind of focused on his own. Joe gave him the leash to gravitate and grab these guys redshirting. What do you need, John? Let's help you get to where you want to go during your redshirt year. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I think the big page turning incident for him, so winning the Goodwill games.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, that was huge. That's the coming out party of John Smith. You know, he's coming off, he's redshirt. He's in the NCAA finals, lose to Jordan, Jim Jordan, and he comes out there and wins the Goodwill games. And oh, by the way, USA Wrestling had a pretty good performance in the Goodwill games that year as well in Seattle.
And it wasn't even Sarkisian yet. It was God, now the guy's name's escaping me, but he beat him at Tbilisi, and then 6 months later, John beats him. But you know, this isn't about John. This is about you. And so let's continue on. But I got a little ADD, big cat. So I go down some tangents here. Talk to me about, so your time at Oklahoma State, 2-time All-American.
I choked twice. Let's be honest. I choked twice. I went in number 1 both years.
So what, looking back at it.
All right. I'm just, hey,
no, I appreciate
anything
it.
you learn about me, I'm pretty brutally honest. Even if it's self-deprecating, it's a fact. You're going to have some of your listeners like, yeah, he choked. Well, he did. I went in number 1 twice. And,
was this something where stepping onto the mat, you knew you were in trouble? You just couldn't cope with the nerves? Like what was like your self-talk before the match you lost each time?
You know, that was crazy. We had a coach. He was there for just a really short time named Gary Keck. And he's like, you know, I never worried about you because I won 2 JUCO titles. And oh, by the way, I wasn't even supposed to win those. But, you know, I wrestled the first one. The semis was I lost to a guy named John Heropoulos from Iowa State. Ironically enough, the 2 schools I was going to go to. I'd beaten John 4 times during the year. A couple of them were close, but I beat John. And he was coached by Lou Bannock. And I think, to be really candid, I'll say it to his face as well, but I think Lou was a little butthurt I didn't go to Iowa State. I think he would have had Heropoulos go down, which would have been tough because they had Eric Volker there.
Yeah.
Had him go down to 97, or John might not have made the team. So he had to beat me. So they shut the match down. They really shortened the match, out of bounds, this, that. Really smart, did as little as possible, sniped a takedown on me. There was actually a little flurry where they got a stall call, and I should have got a warning, but I didn't get it. So he just beat me. He slowed everything down. I'm frustrated. I'm a wild freelance guy. If anybody's seen me wrestle back in the day, I'm like, let's just go, move, dancing around and move. And I think got a little frustrated, and he shut everything down. He wasn't going to wrestle me. But he had 4 chances to beat me. He never did. And he frustrated me in that one. The next one, excuse me, was in my senior year, was against Dean Hall in the semifinals. That one was really frustrating because I wrestled Dean that year in the East-West All-Star match in Edinburgh, because Dean was from Edinburgh. And oh, by the way, we all know who Dean Hall was coached by. If you don't, his name is Bruce Baumgartner, was the head coach at Edinburgh at that time. So I go in that match. I'm hitting a shot, not there. He gets it, slips a takedown. A takedown doesn't bother me because I know I'm going to get 10 others, whatever. Keep going, and just some crazy stuff on the edge. I don't think the match was officiated really well, and I know I didn't wrestle very well. And so I lose there in the semis. Dean goes into the finals, and he wrestles, oh, by the way, a guy named Carlton Hasselrig.
Right.
Who wins the title. He beats Dean, wins the title. And it's like, ooh, that's a first of his little GOAT resume. So, another fun self-deprecating story. So I lose the match. I'm sitting in the chair. And Joe C comes back over, he's frustrated. He kind of hits me on the shoulder, goes, let's, come on, let's go. Let's get back. And I said, Joe, I'm not wrestling. I'm not taking third. I don't care. What? Because I came to win this. I was 41-0 at that time. I had 36 bonus wins, 26 falls.
Just crushing people.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm ranked second in the United States in freestyle. And I can't even win a college title? That's a joke. Never mind. So 2 other people, Joe leaves, because I look at Joe, and Joe ain't doing nothing for me. Because I respect him, I love him, but I was just there to him, no. So he kind of walks away. I had 2 other people walk up to me. Jeff Blatnick, Bruce Baumgartner. Said, man, you got to wrestle. And I'm like, man, I just don't, dude, I don't know. Bruce, and I kind of started to get to know Bruce then. And I knew Blatnick a little bit, but, and they're like, man, you got to wrestle. You're just too good not to wrestle. You got to entertain people tomorrow. So I was like, oh, man, nah,
So you were really thinking, were you really thinking that, or you were just saying that 5 minutes after the match? You were really thinking you were.
Oh, I thought that 5 minutes after the match, I absolutely thought that. Dude, I blew it last year. Now I'm okay. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And I did it a second time. Now I'm pissed.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to do this, man. I'm kicking butt and doing this, and I can't even win this tournament. That made me so mad. And then, so boom, I go back and wrestle. The next day, so I'm going to wrestle. The next day we go there. We have a kid on the team named Vince Silva. Love him to death. I've almost killed him a couple of times in a room, So we're there in that session. Starting that session's all the losers bracket, right?
Yeah.
So I got my stuff. I'm just sitting in the chair, and Vince is jogging. He comes by and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing down here? This is the losers bracket." I go, "Mother trucker." I didn't use trucker. I go, very funny. So I end up not warming up, kind of just a little brief warm up, and Russell took third and just said, "Okay, college is done. Start my freestyle career."
That was it, man.
Yeah, I know it sounds bad. It's like, God, that guy's a putz for wanting to do that. I go, no. It's just my mindset. I just couldn't fathom getting up and just wanting to wrestle and take third when, I cleaned up the bracket. Like I said, I think 36 out of the 41 ended up being 41-1 that year. 36 of them were bonus points.
So is that something that nagged at you for a long time, or are you able to process it and move forward?
Well, I processed it and still nags at me. You say what you want, but that bugs me. I clearly had the field covered. and it happened, so I don't dwell on it like, oh man, and stuff like that. It's a great coaching situation, and it's a story I bring up to athletes and stuff when I get in situations, but it also helps guide and mold me not to give up and to keep going and believing in something and doing, and continuing. I mean, as this story goes on, I say that believing in something, you look at our landscape of our wrestlers, Greco and Freestyle, you look at, there's two guys, and we've talked about them both. And when we were talking earlier today, Matt Gaffari and Rulon Gardner. Well, guess what style they started in? They started in freestyle. They weren't Greco wrestlers. They both were dominant freestyle wrestlers. Well, by the way, we had this old chap named Bruce Baumgartner. Not many people were beating him. And then they had a guy, Tom Erikson, that nobody was beating him either. So there's two guys they had to beat. So they slid over to Greco. Well, old knucklehead Tom actually had the first chance to slide over to Greco, and I never did because I wanted to do it in freestyle and I wanted to beat Bruce.
And you wrestled Bruce Baumgartner, Yankee said like 20, 22 times, 24 times.
No, it was like, I said 26 or 28.
26 or 28. Okay.
Yeah,
and so
he knows better than me and our losses, so I don't count him. He counts. Good for him.
And but because of, so you wrestled him a bunch. You got second at the Olympic trials in 92 and 96. Is that right?
Yeah. 88, 92, and 96, all three.
Unbelievable.
Pensacola, Duquesne was in Pittsburgh, and then Seattle. Oh, by the way, I'm going to jump around on you a little. I'm sorry. Oh, by the way, remember that guy named Carlton Hasselrig they called the GOAT? Carlton Hasselrig, see my hand? 5-0 lifetime. He's never beaten me. 88 Olympic trials, I beat him twice in the trials. I beat him in the pre-trials in Kansas and Topeka, Kansas. Beat him in the Olympic trials. The next year, I beat him in the semifinals in the Midlands, so I get into Russell Bruce. Carlton has never beaten me, so that's another thing I would never let happen. But
wow.
So the GOAT, I got it. Carlton Hasselrig, Hall of Famer. Actually, you look at the Hall of Famers. I've beaten Blatnick. I've beaten Gaffari. I've beaten Hasselrig. I've beaten Dramil Byers. I've beaten a few. Kerry McCoy. I used to beat all those guys. They're all in the Hall of Fame, so I feel okay.
Who did you beat in 97 to make the world team?
97. I think Tully Thompson. I think he upset Justin Greenlee beat Kerry McCoy, and then Tully beat Greenlee, and then I wrestled Tully in the finals.
And Greenlee was from UNI, right?
Huh? Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's right.
Tully was from Nebraska.
Yep. Now, I've had McCoy on, and he was talking about the guy from UNI upset him in the semis at the NCAA tournament.
That's Greenlee, yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many things we're going to cover, but one of the things you said earlier that I thought was so cool was, once Bruce had won and solidified himself, he didn't go to a lot of the national or the international tours. And so you were the number 2 guy, so you got to go. So talk about that a little bit. Like, what was the international tour scene like in the 90s? And like who was there? Where'd you guys go? That kind of stuff.
Well, you mentioned a little bit like John. When John came on the scene, he wrestled in the Goodwill Games. He wrestled in a bunch of these events. Bruce Burnett, love the guy. He just inducted into the Hall of Fame. Had a little formula in terms of how many matches you need on that senior level to kind of prepare yourself for the world and championships. Everybody's slightly different, but for the general was in the 20s or something like that, international matches, friendlies, and stuff like that. And well, early in guys' careers, Bruce's career, John's career, they wrestled in those. Well, I come in on the scene 85, 86. Bruce is wrestling with them a little. He wrestled Tbilisi, World Cup. They always wrestled the World Cup because those are the big high dollar events. They used to have these events called the Grand Prix. They had one in New York underneath in Felt Forum in the Grand Prix. John wrestled
Sergey.
Yeah, that's right. Sergey. Bruce wrestled Gabashvili. And Kenny, well, Fasayev went up there one year for the Worlds, and Kenny beat him, but they brought somebody up. Was it Varayev? He probably wrestled Varayev there or something. But anyway, those guys would wrestle big time events. Now, the way the structure was back then, the number 1 guy got his choice of different events. There's only about 4 events. There's Cuba, Tbilisi tour, and that's like a month-long tour. There's a Krasnoyarsk tour. There's only a handful of tours back then. And so the number 1 guy got a tour, number 2 guy got a tour, number 3 guy, we only had 3 guys deep on the national team. They all got their choice of tours. Well, you touched on it. Bruce didn't go on those tours. He was coaching, took over the job at Edinburgh, was assistant, then was going to take over the job at Edinburgh. So he didn't go on those tours. So I'm just this young single guy, young punk out of college and just coming on the scene. I'm like, I'm in, I'll do it. So I start jumping in on these tours. So I would do double tours. So I would literally spend a month and a half, 2 months in Europe. I'm either in training camp or I'm in Europe wrestling, or Cuba or South America or whatever. And I would wrestle in one of these events. And it was trial by fire. We go to a little mini training camp, go over there, train with other people over there, get in the tournament and wrestle.
So when you're gone, you say it's a month long. So you weren't just going over for the tournament, coming back. You guys were doing like 1 or 2 tournaments and doing, like you said, some training beforehand.
No, we did I use the word friendlies now, but they were exhibition duels. Like you say, back in the day, when the United States used to host the World Cup or events over here, well, they'd bring Russia over and they'd wrestle 2 or 3 duels. Like I've wrestled Russia in Alaska, Bangor, Maine, California, and then
Portland. You don't see that anymore. Why don't they do that?
But that exactly, we don't do that. But that's what they used to do. If you remember, we do that. Well, that same thing applied going overseas. We'd go overseas to wrestle in Tbilisi. Well, it's a pretty novelty thing back in the day when, the American wrestling team comes in. So we would go to one of these little villages, Yakuts, and wrestle a duel on the stage in front of, 1,000 people, and then go ahead and fly out to another place, train a couple days, wrestle another duel, wrestle the tournament, fly back to Moscow back to the States. So that added up to about 2-3 weeks where you'd sit there and bounce around the country. And it was just in front of, just to get little, I call it, like I said, they're soccer friendlies, but now those exhibition matches. Like I said, you remember them. We used to do it all the time back in the day with the World Cup.
Well, that's a perfect word from friendlies, because that's what they are, and just through all that research I had done about John, and they used to have a lot of them in Stillwater, a lot of them. And like you said, Portland randomly, of all, maybe not randomly, but it seems odd now because there's, you don't think of Portland as having these big time duels, but they had them all over. And
I met Clyde Drexler at the duel in Portland.
Really?
Yeah, he was coming out of the locker room or something like that. That dude was like super skinny and tall. That's what I remember. And you kind of shook the national team and stuff like that. The Rose Garden, that's the building. Their venue is a Rose Garden there in Portland, Oregon. So
when you would go to like Russia, for example, for a couple of weeks, I don't know why, but I'm always curious, like, what are you guys eating the whole time? Are you getting like you're going out to eat at restaurants and sitting down, or are they just kind of feeding you like whatever the guys are eating? Like, how do you navigate? We get fed whatever the guys were eating. I mean, whenever they would have training tables, what we do is like we go to places and which is really cool. It's kind of selfish in a sense that they take super good care of Americans, especially in Cuba. But like we'd go to these places and they put on their best for us because it was a big deal. The Americans would come in and they would do these things. So, really first rule of thumb, just like going to Mexico, South America, drink bottled water. You never drink anything out of tap, and make sure everything's cooked, certain temperature and stuff like that. But, caviar, this different stuff, some of the borscht. I remember going over there to Minsk. We were staying at Steike, their Olympic Training Center. We had borscht. I got sick and lost 12 pounds in camp. We were in there camp. I got sick and I just couldn't eat. I just stayed in my room and I could just smell the borscht from the kitchen, just whatever was, however far away. And I just would just think about it and throw up. It was just miserable. So now you throw some beet soup at me, I'd probably choke you. Who were like your buddies on that? Like, who'd you become like best friends with on all those travels over the years? A guy we talked about, Royce Alger. He'd wrestle a lot of them. Dan Chade, Melvin Douglas was one. Townsend a little bit before 96 because he wasn't the guy. 96 was like 95, 96. It was a miracle that Townsend Saunders came in there. If you remember, his name wasn't even Townsend back then. It was Junior Saunders. So what was that? Who was the guy? Was it like Dolph and then he fell off? Was it because that was at 45, right? 45 and a half? We had Metzger. Oh yeah, okay. Because the weight up. So Metzger made his little comeback. Al Freeman was there. Well, that was in the beginning. Al Freeman, Metzger. I'll tell you a stud like 80s, right? Yeah, this is late 80s. I'll tell you the stud that the crime of the century was Joe Russell. That dude was yeah. Stud right there. Remember at the Olympic Festival? He cleaned house. He beat them all.
He beat Freeman and Metzger, won the Olympic festival, then had the motorcycle accident.
I've had his brother on here because, a lot of people don't know, his brother was a 4-time Division II champ and pinned Pat Smith in Pat Smith's first college match.
Yes, I was going to say that. First college match.
And then 5 years later, it's Oklahoma State senior night. Pat's about to win his 4th. Iowa's in town. Gable pulls Joe Williams at a red shirt, the last duel of the season, and Pat Smith texts Joe Williams at Stillwater. It's like, man, like that's a way to open your career and end your career against Joe Russell's brother and Joe Williams.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah, sure.
I try to make it through a podcast without saying Joe Williams' name, but it's hard for me to do. So
the whole Williams, he might not even been the best. Steve might have been the best.
Stevie was Stevie. Rest in peace. Yeah, he was. Yeah. So
BJ was good. Joe was phenomenal.
Oh,
and then, was it in Joe's, I think, senior year at the Big Ten tournament, Joe got dropped into the losers bracket. We had a guy named James Cernich who had to wrestle him in the console semis. It was one of those live or die matches. Joe loses. Now he's the defending national champ, I think, at the time.
Binion, right?
Yeah, and the front side. Then we had him beat. We had him beat because Joe didn't care. But I mean, he did a little bit of my little nonsense, and what I said and but Joe did not wrestle like he was motivated. And then boom, turn around and just because he was just so much better than James, beat James.
Yeah.
Went on and placed 5th or 3rd, qualifies for nationals. Of course, he wins a national title. But yeah, we almost came that close to clipping him in that console bracket because he was so down from losing to Ernest Binion.
And so this is when you were coaching at Purdue?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, we're all over the place. I hope these people.
They're good with it. They're along for the ride, man. So tell me about, let's see, the last time you beat Bruce or you went head to head with Bruce, probably 96. Talk about kind of the spring of 96 leading up to the trials, because you've told me that's the best you've ever wrestled.
Yeah, from 90, people say, hey, the United States had a couple guys. Well, we did, but it wasn't true until 92, 93, to be honest, where I could be there. It was that in that 92, 93 thing, I was going overseas and I was winning tournaments. I beat Schroeder from Germany. I beat Medvedev. I started beating guys that were somebodies, and started beating people. So I started making that ascent. And oh, by the way, I was training with Bruce. I was his training partner. He'd fly me to Edinburgh. His wife would cook dinner for us and stuff like that. And then, from Bruce smashing me, teching me, etc., to now it's a 3 or 4, it's a 6-point match, 3 or 4-point match, 2, 3-point match. The workouts ended. We didn't work out. We didn't train together anymore. Our workouts in national team camps got a little testier. I think I punched him on a couple occasions. Just
hold on. We got to hit the brakes here. So when did you go? So when you went out and trained with him and lived with him, what was,
it was training sequence. I didn't live there, but I mean, I lived at a hotel, but I trained there. I mean, that was a special thing, but I eat dinner at his house and stuff like that.
So that's like when you got to kind of have like a behind the curtains look at the master and what he was doing, like what was his temperament like in workouts, and like what were the workouts like themselves?
Focused. He had a set thing that he wanted to warm up. He had an air dime. There was a workout. He'd run a little bit. And over at Edinburgh, there's a bunch of hills and stuff. So he would have a hill workout that he would do, and do some runs there. He'd have and now I've adapted it a little bit as his air dime workout where, I've got to get certain speed, this, and this. And it wasn't a big deal, but now we all have these smart watches and stuff. I can monitor my heart rate. I can get up to that 150 range and train there. He would do a nice little air dime workout. His workout was really structured. We're going to work on these things. Then we're going to do live wrestling for this much. We'll do situations for these goes. So very structured, very disciplined. I think the best thing I can say about Bruce is he was always structured, always disciplined, never really got out of sorts in a match and even in practice. And that started with practice.
Even his emotions, though, he was very in control.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just very, he was upset, and he's just looking at me. He didn't want to come and punch me back. He just like, and all of a sudden half the people in the room are terrified. They're either running one direction or another or towards us to stop us. But Bruce was never, I don't ever remember Bruce really getting pissed in one of our matches. A couple times maybe got him moving a little bit, but not anything emotional where he lost any of our matches. And that, I would even say that to practice, very, very focused right down the line. Wasn't athletic, just really good single. I mean, really, look, honestly, bad technique. He's on his knees on that high crotch of that single, but he's so strong, hunching his back, drive it in, finish off, boom, gut wrench, gets a nice, good, solid lock on his gut wrench, drives forward, goes left, gets his 2. You know, just really disciplined. And if you stop the gut, he dropped down for the lace onto their left leg, soak it up, and try to cross over to the other. So you had to sit up, drop my hip to the left. I can tell you how I wrestled that match verbatim.
You know it that cold. I mean, and for people who maybe aren't as familiar, you know, Bruce Baumgartner's international rival was David Gobashvili, now from what would be Georgia, at the time Soviet Union. But one time, Bruce didn't want to go to the World Cup in Mongolia, so you got to go. Could you tell that story?
Yeah. So, man, it's somewhere in the late 80s that I go. I finally get to be the guy, 86, 87, somewhere around there. You know, I'd have to look at it. I don't know. I've been hitting the head a bunch since then. But so I got to go to the World Cup. I'm the number 2 guy. Got to go to the World Cup. And it's over kind of Thanksgiving, and it's in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. It's freezing there. We land the plane, and it's freezing. They literally, and this doesn't happen, but they brought a bus out for us. Usually they must park the plane on the tarmac or close by the thing, and you walk into the thing. If you're some of our people who've traveled overseas to the Soviet Union could attest to it. But they had to bring us blankets to cover up so we can go in there. So it's absolutely freezing. We're in this hotel, so we don't go anywhere because it's too cold to go anywhere. So we're just walking around, and then there's a bar in the hotel, and so we're wrestling. The tournament starts. It's a 2-day event. So we go down. We're just walking through the hotel because it's bored. We don't have cable TV. We don't have iPhone. I mean, so you either had a Walkman or you read. So it's kind of what you found something else. So walking through the lobby, down through the thing, and then all of a sudden you walk by the bar. There's a Russian team. A good portion of the Russian team are just sitting in the bar. And I can't remember who I was with. Man. Was it Chade? Somebody? I don't know. And we're looking in there, and they're like, "Hey, that's Gobashvili? He's got a girl literally sitting on his lap, just sitting there. You know, hey, drink next to him. I gotta be careful. I thought he had a cigarette. I could be wrong, but he's just sitting there having a good old time in the bar. And I'm going, guess what? We got to wrestle those dudes the next day. So I'm thinking, I got this sucker. Dude, look at those guys. They're in the bar having a good time, and we're going to wrestle those guys tomorrow. I can't believe the nerve of those guys. Well, the nerve of those guys, go out there the next day. Bobby Douglas is the coach on that trip. I'm out there, some craziness. I jump out to a 3-1 lead on this guy. And I get back to the corner, and I think, because I'm so new, I'm still new at this, right? And Bobby's like, "Hey, you're doing great. You're doing great. 3 more minutes and you're a World Cup champion, Tom Erikson. 3 more minutes, you're a World Cup champion." I'm like, yeah. You know, I'm like, back in my mind, I saw this dude smoking. He's just hanging out. And, you know, sure enough, you know, it's 3-1. I think I ended up losing 5-6, 6-4 or something like that. Maybe scored a point that next period. And Gobi was so long. You know, you stop his shot, he's like 8 inches. It's the same thing with Steve and Neil. You stop their shot, but they're so long in arms. They're long in length, and they got 6 inches wrapped around your leg already. Now you stop a normal guy, but not these guys. They would just pull you in, drive you over, get your points. And so he beat me. And that I told you earlier too, that was the one. There's a couple others, but that was one of the few guys that I never got a chance to get back in my career. Most of the time I've wrestled so much overseas that I've got them all back.
Yeah.
You know, I got you once too.
So even that scenario there, you're in Mongolia, you make weight the next day. Back then, are like, all you guys bringing your food with you to the post weigh-in, or are you just eating like whatever they had there? Like, how out of your routine must you have been on those trips?
You would try to bring weight. Okay. You had to have a crock pot. Boiling water.
No, you bring a crock pot.
Yeah, you brought a crock pot with, man. You had a converter crock pot because you wanted to charge it. You had to have a converter to have your oh my gosh, the big old clunky things, cassette players and stuff like that.
The Walkman.
Yeah. So you had a crock pot. You brought ramen noodles or like a Dinty Moore meals. That's what I would bring and stuff like that. So my suitcase would be heavy going in and empty coming back because I would bring food in there because I would eat very little of what they had over there.
Wow.
And I'm a big guy, and I got a sensitive stomach, right? I'm a big guy, but yeah, didn't eat a lot. Like I said, you bottled water, you ate that. There's some stuff, chicken, you ate the chicken, which is probably the nastiest thing you can eat. I'm sure we ate dog and cat because you hear them barking one day, you don't hear them the next. So you probably had that meal that night. So
you mentioned Stephen Neal. What kind of an athlete was that dude?
Just explosive, just really long and explosive, and fearless, just fearless. I remember, and when I say an athlete, I mean, could do other things. We were in '96, we were at the pre-Olympic camp in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we had a little training camp before the team went to Atlanta because we're right there. Mm-hmm. And just for giggles, we competitive knuckleheads that we were, we started playing a little wiffle ball tournament in the little quad area of our dorms and stuff like that. That dude, like one-handed swatting little wiffle balls just a mile away. I'm just really just an incredible athlete. And here I am. I'm a pretty good athlete, I thought. And here's a guy that's like just boom and just doing. I'm like, gosh, we got to watch out for this guy. This guy's coming.
And the fact that he, went on to the NFL, all of that, just incredible. An awesome representation for wrestling. I love that guy went out there and never played a lot and then was on, the Patriots. So I just love that guy did that and that Belichick gave him that shot.
Well, it wasn't Belichick that gave him the shot initially.
Really?
He ended up going to Philadelphia or somewhere for a taxi squad. They traded for him. Belichick, he did, but he didn't start with the Patriots.
Got it.
He started somewhere else, got traded to the Patriots on their taxi squad, won his first Super Bowl ring while being on the taxi squad, then played in the other two Super Bowls, get his other two Super Bowl rings. But it's still a great story. I apologize.
No. I didn't know that. No problem at all. So where were you training at when you weren't traveling during this time? Were you at the OTC?
Sometimes at the OTC. The OTC back then was not what the OTC is now, the residence program and stuff like that. There was only it was more of a sideshow and a brief stop for some athletes. What they say back in the day when we were training there, only like 15% of the athletes that actually trained in the Olympic Training Center were Olympic athletes. That number is drastically higher now because they've taken out the kids programs. If you've ever been at the Olympic Training Center back when it was in the early stages, they used to have a big old soccer field and track up there. And, for us to get to wherever we were, like when we would practice, we'd have a training cycle out there. We would probably go to the Deaf and Blind Center. We were at the airport one time. There's never any space there for us to train, but we house there, walk across the track, go to the little dining court, then back across, then they bus us to different places. So the OTC wasn't what it is now in terms of our elite athletes in the residency program, Schneider there, Cejudo, these guys using it. It wasn't that way at all back then.
So were you going out to Foxcatcher, or were you just training at Purdue, or?
Let me see. A bunch of my training was at Purdue. That was near the end when I was done, but I was still at Oklahoma State, so we would train there.
Oh, you were based out of Stillwater?
Based out of Stillwater. We would do training cycles out at Foxcatcher. When the movies came out, and people always ask me, were you ever out there? And I'm like, yeah, I was out there. Matter of fact, I think I'm in one of the movies, the ESPN version, for like 5 seconds. I wrestled one duel under the Foxcatcher banner. And that was a USA Cuba duel at Villanova when they had wrestling at Villanova. And in the video, it was really quick. We were watching it with my wife, and she goes, that's you. I said, no, that's Severin. And we replayed it, and sure enough, it was me, John Shake. I beat Rodriguez, not Rodriguez, I can't remember his name. Walk off the mat, I'm shaking his DuPont's hand, and it was like for 5 seconds. So I didn't need a SAG card for that.
Was it the facilities just lights out, or what was it like out there?
They weren't lights out. They kind of were, but they weren't. There was actually several facilities. They had a pool. It was a little hodgepodge where they kind of added on. They had one dominant wrestling room. They had a pool, weight room area, and then the wrestling room, which was 3 mats, locker rooms, a little kitchenette at the end. They did have a technology program called the Dominator Series where they was really groundbreaking and still probably would be considered today, where they'd employed a guy who will take like 15-second clips of scoring techniques. So you get like 5 to 10 going in, 5 to 10 on the finish.
Yeah.
High crotches. So I would go on the computer, click it up, look for high crotches. Then I'd find all high crotches and who hit the high crotches. Then I could see their setup and the 5 or 10 second setup going in. And they had this program there at Foxcatcher. And after it all kind of fell apart, nobody knew what happened to it. But we'd stay off campus on some in a hotel. We'd eat meals in local restaurants and stuff like that. Some of the guys who had friends would stay with the Foxcatcher guys on the farm.
Yeah.
We would go there. I think I've been there 4 or 5 times.
Sure.
Yeah, he's a different cat. I mean, that's the next question. Yeah, I think it's been well proven. Whatever. I wasn't there the whole time, but I will say, yeah, I'll verify, different cat for sure.
For sure. Now, outside of your wrestling career, which is really a 5-hour conversation to get in and out of every nuts and bolts, but like you said, number 2 guy in the U.S., one of the top guys in the world for the better part of a decade, maybe longer. When did you get
85 to 2000?
There it is, 15 years. When did you get into MMA?
People approach me. Our first guy was Severin, that got into it and stuff like that. And he was a big splash. Then the next guy that got into it was Coleman. And Coleman, he was, Severin and Coleman were our groundbreakers, and I had some people approach me about doing it and stuff like that. And then I got to 2000, didn't make the team. 2001, I'm like, okay, let's try to do this. Let's jump into this and stuff like that. Had a gentleman, Rico Ciparelli, who kind of was trying to put some things together and had an idea of what we wanted to do. And he was very groundbreaking. Rico, very smart individual. He brought his brother, who was like a paralegal, so to speak. He would run summons and stuff like that and serve you with your subpoenas and work with the legal department. And so we had that group, but that group became what we called the RAW team, Real American Wrestlers. And then we had a motto, anyone, anytime, anywhere. And of that crew, you had myself, Randy Couture, Dan Henderson, Matt Linland, Dennis Hall, all fought more or less under that RAW banner and stuff like that. And we would train out in Hermosa Beach, and then they moved that up into California, where Linland had a car dealership and had a gym in his back room and stuff like that. And we all represented in there. So I've been overseas when Couture lost to Ensign Inoue, so on different things. So matter of fact, we fought in Brazil. Dan Henderson and I both went down to Brazil. Ciparelli took us both down to Brazil, and he won the light heavyweight tournament. I won the heavyweight tournament. The same night I beat Kevin Randleman in the finals.
Tell us about the Randleman fight. Walk us through it.
Fight should have never happened. Should have never happened. Kevin has already been on the scene. He hadn't wrestled. He hadn't fought in the UFC yet. But Kevin, obviously, his nickname is, and he's well deserving of it, called the Monster. And he had already fought in an event down in Brazil. So the Brazilians are pretty sharp people. So they call up Ciparelli and invite me down to fight in this. It's a 4-man, not an 8-man, but a 4-man tournament. So 2 fights, 1 night. I'm like, yes, this is real early in my career. I've got to fight and make my bones. Brazil, Japan. I don't want to say I don't care about the United States. I do, but that's where the fighting's at, down in Brazil.
Back then, it wasn't even happening in the U.S., really, right?
Right. So they were outlawing it. So you had to make your bones. You had to prove to the people that you were legit. So I had to go fight there. And, so I'm like, boom, yeah, I'm on, sign in. So I'm going down there. So I get a call from Coleman, and Mark Coleman, and he says, hey, man, I hear you're in the Brazil Open, the 97 Brazil Open. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I got to do it. I got to make my bones on it. He goes, well, Kev's in there. I'm like, yeah, I heard. And he goes, well, you guys don't need to be fighting. You need to kind of probably, I go, man, he's already won down there. That's your deal. I go, I got to, we got to fight. And he's
Why
like,
did he want you to fight him? Because you're both wrestlers or what?
Yeah, I'll go with your story.
Oh, he was worried about you.
I have a personal belief that size matters, and he kind of knows that I'm a pretty big guy, and Kevin's not as big as I am.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, because Randleman wrestled Mark Ryland in college. I was like 167. So after about 10 years of Mexican supplements, he was a heavyweight, or was he not even a heavyweight?
I fought him. He weighed 2 1/4.
Okay.
He was maxed out, I think, right at 2 1/4.
So do you guys fight in the first round or the second round of the Brazilian Open?
We fought in the finals. I fought a guy named Pantera Negri, beat him, submitted or punched him out. They stopped it. I can't remember who he fought. We get in the finals. And so we're in the finals. And dude, I'm nervous. I ain't gonna lie. I'm fighting Kevin. He's quick as a cat and everything else. So we came up, we kind of had a plan of what we want to do, cut him off and et cetera. Let's get him striking and stuff like that. Weren't too worried about the takedowns and things like that, but yeah, you got to be aware of it. So, I go in there and, if you ever watch that fight, I told you if you didn't find it, you should watch that.
I found it.
He clips me. With that big, is an overhand left, overhand right. The same punch he knocked out Crow Cop with, he throws it and he kind of hits me and my head just kind of snaps a little bit. And it's just like, whoa, okay, come here. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my fighting career is one, I could take a shot like that from Kevin and walk through it. Not walk through it per se, but go forward. Not like, usually, let's be fair and honest. We've had a great deal of wrestlers. You get that fight or flight syndrome. And, invariably, you see some of the early wrestlers, they get hit, they do the duck and dive. They shrug their shoulders, drop their head, and they want to dive. Let's get to the legs. I don't want to punch anymore. Let's make the game my way. And I was able to kind of walk forward and said, okay, come here. Kind of punch, caught him, trapped him up against the fence. No, he kind of drove me up against the fence. And I can remember people, oh man, get off the fence. I'm like, I'm good here. It's weird that I felt that way, but I felt Kevin trying to drive me up into the fence. And you know how when someone's kind of pushing you so hard, they're almost shaking because they're just trying to put it. So I'm like, okay, I like this. I'm good. I'm not threatened. Pressure down on his head. I'm not threatened. Okay. Oh, let's throw a knee. Let's throw another knee. Oh, wait a minute. Here, let's throw a little right cross. And all of a sudden the right cross, he wakes him up. If you were to see the fight, I throw a couple knees. He creates space, throw a nice little short hook with the right. He tries to run away from him. I'm like, no, come here. Grab him by the back of the neck and hit him with an uppercut that put him straight down. Woo. And then I hit him 2 or 3 more times when he was on the ground. Out cold, body locked out straight. So,
God. And you said you put him on the stretcher yourself.
Yeah, like I said, you watch the full version. It's out there, and it was crazy. They're trying to pick up Kevin. They're checking him first. They're going to put him on the stretcher, and he's dazed. I mean, I got him. And they're kind of dragging these out. I'm like, dude, just step back. So I kind of grabbed his, set him, the upper body, his torso, get him on the stretcher. He's going out the cage, and all of a sudden he puts his hands out and grabs the side of the cage. He's like, I ain't going out the stretcher. So he kind of gets off the stretcher, wobbles off, and Coleman helps out and stuff like that.
Wow. Dude, those are the early days of fighting. That's underground. I just can't even.
The crazy thing about that Brazil stuff is that fight was went off at 9. The first fight went off at 9. We fought at 2 a.m. Just crazy. It just goes on. The clubs are it's just crazy down there.
And the fans are just animals, right? Just going wild for it.
Hey, they changed the referee. Mario Yamazaki ended up being the referee, but it was some other guy first. And it happened in Henderson's match. He wrestled maybe against Pele. They gave Henderson the win or something like that. They stopped at Henderson. So the people were throwing shit at stuff at the cage.
You can swear.
Getting crazy and stuff like that. So they changed the referee because they thought they were going to kill him. So they got in Mario Yamazaki, who refereed the rest of the fights.
Jeez. And then, one of the things I was most excited to ask you about is the Pride Days, Japan, really the epicenter of fighting at that time. Now it's Las Vegas, but back then it was Tokyo Dome, Tokyo, Japan. You were over there for one of the biggest fight audiences of all time, 57,000, I think you said. What was that event? Just kind of share that story.
That was in the Tokyo Dome. And Pride put on a show. I remember the first time I fought for Pride, and there was 20,000 people there. In Tokyo, the Ariake Stadium or something like that. I'm like, wow.
Now, is it quiet or is it loud? Because I heard they're very quiet.
It's quiet. But the intros are crazy. They do these pyrotechnics. They have your name on the board. We'll go to the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah.
There's 53,000 in the Tokyo Dome. We literally it's a baseball venue, so to speak. So we're on the first base side into the dugout. So you go down to the dugout. So if you came out the dugout and walked up, you probably have to walk to deep second base, would have been where the ring was.
Okay.
So, but instead of doing that, what you would do is you'd go back into the balls of the Tokyo Dome, get in the car, leave, get outside, drive around to the back of center field, pull into an entrance there, and then you'd go and stage. You would stage right there, and then you come through the center field fence, like there's gonna be a platform, the elevated platform, the screen cracked open and a ramp would walk out. You'd walk through your pyrotechnics and stuff like that, walk all the way down to center field while they're playing your music.
Is that where Buster Douglas knocked out Tyson, the Tokyo Dome? Okay, so that's where you're at. So you walk out, and I mean, that was cool. It had to be sweet. I mean, 57,000 is wild.
That you just, it just, you know, you're there and your mind boggles like, gosh, this is cool. And you're just looking around and they're going crazy then. And you're going out there.
Man.
And I had a great matchup for my fight, which ended up costing me a little bit, but it was a great matchup and stuff.
How'd it cost you?
Well, so like I said, they drove us around to the back, right? To the pre-stages. So we're at the pre-stage. And Gary Goodrich is my corner guy. And Goodrich is like the legend over there. He's fought over there. He's a legend anyway. So I'm there, and Goodrich disappears. I'm like, where'd Gary go? You know, I'm a little nervous. I have a good matchup for him fighting a boxer, Matt Skelton. He's a boxer, little K1. I guess he's pretty good, but K1. Look, he's fighting a wrestler.
You're feeling good. Yeah.
So I'm liking the matchup. So Gary comes back to me and says, hey, come here. And he goes, they want you to stand with him. What do you mean stand with him? They want you to stand with him. I go, what do you mean stand? They want you to stand. They want you to fight standing up. I go, dude, that's crazy. He goes, I go, now, without saying it, we know who runs Pride, or you should know who runs Pride.
Yakuza?
Yeah, that sounds like a good name.
Yeah.
So they told him to tell me I got to stand. So
they're not asking, they're telling.
So what do I do? What do I do? So, and he goes, do what you have to do. So I go out there, hit a shot, boom, catch him, lateral drop it, kind of a little swinging lateral, let him fly, take him down. He's hanging on like you should, you know, and I actually get to mount position. So I'm in a great position. I'm just going to, it's only a matter of time. I'm clearing. I want to posture up so I can start punching down and everything else. So I'm trying to fight the position. So I come in there, I'm putting a hand in. So I put a hand up on, I'm clearing their hand. And I'm like, so I let my hand go up onto his neck, up onto his throat. And I heard him like, I'm like, are you serious? So I just kind of geared up a little bit and clamped down on his neck and did like a little rape choke with one hand, and he tapped to it. Oh. So it's like I said, if you watch that fight with Skelton, I literally beat him with the rape choke. It wasn't illegal. They didn't stop it. Boom, he stopped. I win the fight off of a crazy technique that any first-year jiu-jitsu guy is going to armbar me. If I kind of straighten out, they're going to, you know, a leg's coming over the top, and they're going to armbar me. And
so they still pay you, or what they do afterwards?
No, I got paid. I ended up walking back and going back, you know, and we're all pumped up. I did jumping around the ring. I'm excited. The fans are going crazy. It's all good. And I had a couple people come up to me and ask me what I did. And I'm like, what do you mean what I did? Like, what did you do? What did you do? You know, and I'm like, I won. What are you
talking about? Yeah.
So, you know, the next thing that we had, so the next event that we have over there is Goodrich is fighting in, I don't want to call it a Grand Prix, but then they fight in the Olympic Stadium, the outdoor stadium. That's when Nogueira fought Bob Sapp.
Oh, wow.
And Gary Goodrich, who did he fight? He had a good matchup. Nogueira was there because we were in the locker room with Nogueira and Mirko Krokop, because I remember a hand fight with Krokop and kind of drilling with Nogueira because Sapp was so big, and so that was our locker room. So we're in that locker room. I have a Japanese kind of manager, so they come into the locker room, and they're like, Tom-san, we want to fit you for your gloves. I'm like, what? For the next event, we want to fit you for your gloves. So I'm like, oh, okay. They hand me boxing gloves, K1 gloves.
No.
So I get fitted with K1 gloves. So my next event, because I have a contract for like 3 fights or something like that. So this could be just debatable, but this is what happened to me. So my next fight, after I was told to stand with somebody, I didn't. My next fight was a stand-up fight in a K1 fight. And I fought on Bob Sapp's team, Seven Samurai, and I fought Hirama Amada, but it was a K1 fight. And then I ended up fighting Jan the Giant. I fought Mike Bernardo, and all of a sudden I'm a K1 fighter. Folks, I didn't want to fight K1.
No.
But I had a contract. And I was making a good chunk of change. I wasn't making astronomical money like some of these folks are, but I was making and I'm pretty stupid anyway. So I'm like, I'm going to get paid excess of this. Okay, I'll fight it.
And so when they said to try on your gloves, were they real? They make you fight that night when they put them on you?
No, I didn't fight that night. They just wanted to make sure, because I'm a bigger guy. They wanted to make sure the standard glove would fit me, because they had 2 sets of gloves. And they wanted to make sure the standard glove would fit me. And I just like, what the hell was that all about?
Did you take some shots in the K1 days?
Oh, man, K1. I should. The bad part about K1, I can't remember. So I fight that one with Hirama Amada. I got TKO on my feet. They just stopped it. And I can't even know. Like I said, I've been hit a bunch in that one. Then I fought Mike Bernardo. And that was a qualifier to the K1 Grand Prix, the final 16. And Bernardo is a South African, a very tough fighter, gritty. He's an old school guy, and he'd been in the K1, and I think he'd been close but never won it. So I got to fight Bernardo. So I actually studied. I started training, stand up, and I was like watching. Well, Bernardo's got a little catch right behind his right ear. And you hook him, you catch him right here off the backside of the jaw. He goes down pretty easy. So I was watching tape. So lo and behold, so where do I go out there? I'm just training to hit him with one punch, just that little hook. Boom, boom. So I get in there, clip him. I drop him right off the bat. This nice little looping hook, drop a K1 fighter. Like, oh my goodness. Get up. I may be wrong on the sequence when I say this, but he gets up now. Bernardo watching film too. He's pretty chippy. I say chippy. I don't want to say dirty. He's chippy. He'll get in there and shoulder punch you, kind of like Randy does in the fight. It's a little kind of. So he started hand fighting me and kind of getting in close to me. So I hit him with the lateral and threw him to his back. I got yellow carded. Get back up. Okay, calm down. Boom, hit him again. I drop him again. So I got two knockdowns. This is all in the first round. So
plus a lateral drop.
Yeah, plus and a takedown, right? So my corner, Louis Chiparelli's actually there in my corner. Another guy, you only need one more. Put it down. Go get him. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, and I'm in the Grand Prix. Lo and behold, I'm not thinking, because that would have put me in the Grand Prix against really good kickboxers. But I wasn't even thinking of that. So I'm like, okay, let's go for it. So I'm going to go out there and I just start brawling, because I just want to hit him with that one. I know if I hit him right, I'll get him. But forget the technique. I just want to hit him, if that makes sense to you. I just want to throw in and I want to hit him. And boom, he drops me. Boom. So all of a sudden, we got 3 downs in one round. This is all the first round. We're like slugging away. Whew. Go in there, boom, pop up. My corner's still chirping at me. One more knockdown. I'm like, yeah, one more knockdown. Go hit that button again. So we get in there, boom, 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 get an exchange. He clips me again, stuns me. He knocked me back. And then as I was falling down, he threw so hard, he was falling into me. He kind of pushed me. He kind of fell off my chest and pushed me. So, and like I said, if you ever watch a fight, my head will go down and it snaps. So my head just whipped across, and I kind of brought my gloves in my hands, like, it wasn't, the head snap rang my bell really well. Boom, TKO beat me. But yeah, it was like four downs in one round, but it's just crazy.
How unfair though for them to take away the wrestling. Like, that's crazy to me that they did that. That's just part of it, or it's a show.
I kind of told you what happened, why.
Yeah.
Why I believe it, because if you look at my career, that those happened right in there.
Yeah.
And then the next thing they do, they throw me in with another guy named Jan the Giant, Jan Norte, who's 6'9", another South African, a huge guy.
Kickboxing only or fighting?
Kickboxing only.
Oh my God.
Kickboxing only. Yeah. The little secret about that bout is about 12 days before that fight, Gary Goodrich is overtraining in Japan for this K1 event. And something happens. He calls me up like on a Wednesday. He says, hey, Tom boy, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm laying on a couch. I've had surgery on my knee. I had a little meniscus removal on my knee. Nothing crazy, just a little tune-up on my knee. I'm just recovering from surgery. I'm like, you want to fight? And I go, well, how much and who? I mean, that's my first question. How much? It's knucklehead. I mean, poor wrestler. They're paying you cash, by the way. I shouldn't say that, but they pay you cash. So how much and who? So they tell me, I'm like, well, I just had my knee day. We'll work it out. No kicks. You just punch. You just go ahead and punch.
Oh, my God.
There. The next day, I'm on a plane flying to Japan. Get to Japan, go into the fight. The fight's on a Saturday, which is actually on a Sunday, our time, etc. Go in there. Goodrich is actually on the card, so he's not even in my corner. I got another corner guy I don't even know. I kind of know him, but not really. He goes, look, man, Jan likes to set up and take his time and feel you out. He goes, just jump on him. Just go in the corner and just tee off. Start teeing off, whatever. I'm like, what the hell? I know I ain't got more than a round of gas, so I might as well. Ran over there into the corner. I literally kind of hop-stepped over there into the corner, got him in the corner and just started teeing off, dropped him. Now all of a sudden I'm in shock. First time Jan's really been down. Get up again, go back over the corner, start teeing off again. He clips me with a shot. I'm like, oh no. And I'm like, wait, no, don't do it. I'm like, I could close my eyes. I'm throwing punches. I'm just throwing. Clips him, knocks him down, stop the fight, TKO, beat it.
Oh my God.
I'm like 3 days notice. People, this is all stuff you guys can look up in Wikipedia or whatever, fight database. It's all in there.
Lordy, man, just you hear now about guys going over like acclimation, they're getting their diet right. You're flying over with a freaking knee that's cut open, and dude, that's awesome.
I was over there. Yeah.
God. And now, Tom, we didn't even get to talk about the current stuff, but Tom, now you're at Duke, and you've had an awesome coaching career. We don't have time to get into it, but I got to have you back on, man. You're an Illinois guy. We have that in common, and we could obviously.
Absolutely.
So we've now, to this day, I mean, today in total, we've talked about 2 hours. So it's been awesome, man, hearing these stories. I really thank you for coming on the show. Any last words for the audience here, Mr. Tom?
No, man, I appreciate it. Like I say, if you guys were here at the beginning of this podcast and learned a little bit about my story, if I have some time, I'm like, anybody can do what I'm doing. I get amazed at my kids. I get, as a coach, I really get frustrated with our kids because I'm like, you can do better. You can achieve something. And they're like, no. I'm like, everybody I've ever coached, not everybody, but the vast majority of the kids that I've coached in college had better high school credentials than I did for a fact. So when you tell me you can't do something, I look in your eye and laugh because you can, because I've done it. I've done it in unique situations, but I've done it. And look, it's out there for the people that are wrestling, fighting. It's doable. You can do it. You have to believe it. You have to have that dream, believe it, work for it. And it can be done. And man, like I say, as far as coming out here, I love sitting there telling stories. And like I say, you guys want to look it up at Wikipedia. My timing might be off, but the fights aren't. The data is there that I ain't lying for. You guys can check it out. Like, you didn't know I fought Randleman until you saw it today.
Yeah, no, I did. And then, stories aside, the meaning that you just shared, though, it's like, hey, man, never even qualified for the Illinois State tournament, and here you are making a living out of it. So that's a lot of hope and a lot of inspiration for a lot of guys out there. Tom Erikson, thanks for your time today, man.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. That's it for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. This episode was brought to you by Manscaped. Get 20% off on your next purchase with the promo code WCML at manscaped.com.